Hello everybody! So, I've never done a story time on Korea, but there are a few that I could tell, and today I decided I was gonna break my story time virginity and tell you some stories about Korea. I'll tell you the story of my loveliest taxi ride I've ever had in Korea, and then I'll tell you how I once actually got kicked out of a taxi. Before I do that though, hello, my name is Janice, welcome to my channel. If you're new around here, I make videos talking about Korea, talking about more specifically language learning, and even more specifically my learning language of Korean. I will talk about living in Switzerland and what's it like. I also have started talking about my eating disorder recovery. If any or all of that sounds interesting to you, have a look around on my channel and you might find something that you enjoy. And if you do, why not stick around? I feel like there's two types of taxi drivers in Korea. There's the super lovely and kind ones, which will make you feel super at home and comfortable, will ask you where you're from, and just in general, just be very kind and open-hearted. And then there's other people who are just really mean. It's really rude as taxi drivers. And I, as a customer, I try to be super kind. I try to not be like Sharon with the "can I see your manager" haircut. I try to be a super kind and good customer and just be a pleasant person to drive with. But these drivers, as soon as you get into their car, they just hate your fucking guts. Today, I'm gonna tell you two stories that happened to me in Korea. Generally, talking about me driving in taxis in Korea, I always fall asleep. And it doesn't matter how much sleep I've had the night before. I will always fall asleep in taxis. I just can't help it. There's something really calming and relaxing about that little motor driving sound and maybe a little sound of the radio or some outside noises, but also not having to worry about where you have to get off in the next stop, which door you have to get out. Do I have to stand up for an ajusi or an ajuma who wants to sit down and take my seat? Do I have to make space for anybody else? Where are my friends? You don't have to look around and like worry about everything around you. You can just sit down and know the driver will drive you to your end destination. It's not even that I specifically will be like, yes, it is now time for me to sleep. No, instead it's just my body is just like, oh, okay, nap time. Usually nothing really happens when I fall asleep in taxis, especially since it happens every time I enter a taxi in Korea, or almost every time. But one time in 2017, the first time I went to Korea, me and my two friends, we were driving from Gangnam to Hongdae, or maybe it was Myeongdong to Hongdae. Like a 20-minute drive or so. I fell asleep, as I usually do. But this time, I apparently started snoring. As we were driving into Hongdae, my friends woke me up and then proceeded for the rest of the night to make fun of me for the fact that I had snored in the taxi. Thanks, guys. My loveliest taxi ride ever was from Hongdae to Gangnam, more specifically the SBS filming station where a certain TV show, whose name I've forgotten, but I will insert here. Me and a few friends were going to be members of the audience there, so we wanted to go. We decided that we were too lazy to use the train. You have to change stations maybe once or twice, and we just weren't up for it. We were just like, you know what, we're lazy. We just want to go with a taxi, so that's what we did. We went to the main road and we were already a little bit late to be like early for the show. Being from Switzerland, we are always very on time. We are not about to be like 15 minutes late or just show up right before they're like, oh yeah, let's go and see the show. No, we were gonna be there like early. Early. We got dressed, we went down to the main street where there were loads of taxis always driving past us. We tried to search for an area where the taxi would be able to comfortably stop without having to halt the entire traffic coming our way, because it was in the evening. As we were waiting though, we started to realize that there were loads of taxis on the road, but none of them were free. All of the taxis that were driving past us had their taxi lights turned off, signaling that this taxi was already occupied by somebody else. We figured, well, that's not so much of a problem, let's just wait and see until there's one that actually wants to pick us up. After waiting for about 15 minutes, we were starting to get a little bit antsy because we were already late to be early, so now we were starting to get late for being early. At this point, no taxi was driving towards us, and we were like, what are we gonna do? Are we gonna have to take the 40-minute train ride? We decided to wait for another 5 or so minutes, and then if nobody would be able to pick us up, we would take the train and we would have to run for it. We waited, and then finally, God gracious, a taxi came towards us, and me and my friends got in. My friend sat in the front seat, and this taxi driver was a literal ray of sunshine. He was so happy to see us. He was smiling and he was so kind to us. As he was driving us towards the station, he was asking us, you know, where you're from, and we all collectively said, oh, you know, we're from Switzerland. He started to make conversation with us about Switzerland. He was super happy to hear that we were from Switzerland, and he started telling us about how he'd always wanted to see Switzerland, how he'd always wanted to see the Alps and breathe the fresh air. My friend who was sitting in the front seat, she spoke the best Korean out of all of us. She was conversing with him back and forth about Switzerland, about cultural differences, about Korea, everything. And at one point, I recognized that she had made a tiny little mistake, a grammar mistake in Korean. Holy shit, I figured out that she had made a mistake. I decided I was gonna correct her. The taxi driver seemed to be really impressed by this and proceeded to tell the entire cabin that I was the best Korean speaker out of all of my friends. Which, not true, but I thought it was really kind and it made me happy. I was like, oh, thank you. Not true though, but thanks. As we were driving towards Gangnam, he started to tell us, you know, that if we had any questions about Korea or Korean language, that he will be able to, you know, help us out. His English wasn't exactly the best, but we understood him enough to be able to actually ask him certain things. Our drive to Gangnam and to SBS filming station, it turned into a little Korean lesson, which was just so kind and so nice. I mean, usually taxi drivers will just sit there and just drive you where you need to go. He took us in and he just talked to us in Korean about Korean culture and stuff, and mostly my friend had to sort of take over the conversation because all of us in the back were just kind of like, I don't know what he's saying. Do you understand what he's saying? No, not really. But you know, it was really kind of him. At one point, he started talking to us about agriculture in Korea, and it was just really pleasant and a lovely conversation we were having, or what my friend was having and translating to the back row. When we arrived in Gangnam, my friend gave him the money, and at that point, I was actually really sad that Korea is a non-tipping culture. Switzerland, you can pretty much be like, you can tip, but you don't have to tip. I kind of like that balance. So say that like you're in a restaurant and the waitress is super nice to you and she makes your experience just really great and really lovely, I like to tip. If the waiter is an asshole to me and just, you know, like makes us wait for really long and he just hates us, then I don't want to tip. But this time in Korea, I really wanted to tip this taxi driver. He was so kind and so lovely, but I know that in Korea, tipping can actually come off as rude, and so I decided that instead of tipping him, I was gonna just say 감사합니다, bow really low and give him a really bright smile and hope that, you know, I could convey my my thanks in that way. And now let's talk about the time that I got kicked out of a taxi. It's not like I was drunk and threw up in the car, but I'm getting ahead of myself. If you've ever typed taxi Korea into YouTube, you're probably familiar with the stereotype that taxi drivers in Korea are really rude. They will drive and make you feel scared for your life, but I never experienced that until this one day where I was actually a bit like, ooh. Up until that point, I had actually never had a bad experience with taxi drivers. It had been a really, really long and exhausting day. And I'm talking like waking up quite early, spending the entire day walking around all over Seoul. We were just exhausted, we were tired, our muscles ached, we just wanted to lay down, we just wanted to be at peace, be calm, and just relax for a bit. We had eaten dinner in Hongdae, and our Airbnb was also in Hongdae, so technically it would have taken us maybe 15 to 20 minutes to walk home. But because we were so exhausted, because we were so tired, and my friend was actually wearing heels, we had really started to hurt her feet, to the point where she was pretty much limping, we decided that we were gonna get a taxi home. We walked to the main road where a taxi would be able to scoop us up and drop us off at our Airbnb without having to go into the little alleyway. We'd waited for maybe 5 to 10 minutes. When a taxi finally drove up to us, we were able to, you know, stop them. We proceeded to get in. Now this taxi driver from the get-go, he seemed to be in a bad mood. I don't know what had happened earlier that day, but he was pissed. For some reason, it was decided that I was gonna be the one who has to sit in the front seat and take over the talking bit. And now my Korean isn't exactly the best Korean, and especially back in 2018, my Korean was even less good than it is now. Less good, more bad. English grammar. So all I did was say 안녕하세요 and then show him the address of our Airbnb in Korean. Don't show them the address in Romanized letters because it's just confusing. Like things can be misspelled without even meaning to be misspelled, but just show them it in Korean. It makes things easier. So I showed him the message in Korean. I did not know why he was so angry with me. Obviously, it was gonna be like a 5-minute ride, but he would have gotten paid for that, and he could have even driven us around for like a little bit more and then just have us spend more money, but he proceeded to look at me in a really angry fashion, and I didn't know what was wrong. None of us knew what was wrong. I proceeded to show him the address and say, "괜찮아요?" Meaning, is it okay? You know, can you drive us there? And he said, "아니요!" and then proceeded to just go off in Korean. Me and none of my friends understood anything that he was saying. All we got was a sinking feeling in our hearts that he was really pissed, and we couldn't understand why. Of course, we knew that it was a short drive, but you know, he was probably still gonna take us. We just kept sitting in the car, and when he had stopped talking, we were all just dead silent. He finally started driving after ripping us an absolute new one. I was actually kind of gripping the door, just being a little bit scared for my life. He stopped abruptly and proceeded to tell us to get the fuck out. Not in English, but in Korean. All of us just kind of got the hint of get out. That's all we got. We didn't understand the actual words. His intentions were very clear of just get the fuck out of my car. My friends proceeded to very quickly exit the car, but I was still stuck in the front seat next to him, and I was very confused because he hadn't given me a price that he was gonna charge us. So I asked very timidly, 얼마나요? I felt so teeny tiny next to this guy, and he proceeded to just go, "Ash." That was his reaction to me asking, "So how much is it gonna be?" Instead of saying, "Oh, that was so rude," you could have said that a little bit nicer, or, you know, just telling him off. I just went into teeny tiny Janice state and just said, 감사합니다. 와, 정말 감사합니다. And exited the car and just kind of walked around the car to make sure that he wasn't gonna run over me because I was about to die in Korea. And he just sped off. He was so pissed at the fact that he had to drive us a 5-minute route. As we were standing on the sidewalk after he had sped off, we actually realized that he did drive us to the right road. The thing was though, he drove us a little bit further away than we would have actually had to go, so we still had to walk quite a bit to our Airbnb. As we walked home though, I just kind of thought to myself, like, what if we had been very lost tourists? This guy would have been so intimidating to somebody new to Korea that it would have just been scary and a really bad experience. Ultimately, we did end up getting home and my friend could take off her hellish high heels, but yeah, not a fantastic driving experience. It was fine ultimately, of course, but you know, I just thought, what if this guy picked up like an extremely lost tourist who didn't know that their Airbnb was like 10 minutes away? Have you ever had a really good or really bad experience driving taxis? Not even in Korea, but just in your hometown. Let's share some stories down in the comments. Every time, so weird. You know what the comment section is. It's not like YouTube's suddenly gonna put it up there. So this is the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, you can stick around until when I make a new one. I hope you drink lots of water, get lots of sleep, and this is the end. Bye! Oh wait, 2 ads. Wah!